As of December, Uber reported 5.4 million drivers and couriers worldwide. Around the same time, one of those drivers who had spent 7 years driving with the company and had invested $180,000 launching his own Uber Black business had his account permanently deactivated. And it's an experience that's become all too common for gig workers just to be deactivated like that without notice. Levi Sumagai-Sai is a senior reporter for MarketWatch. She covers the gig economy, inequality, and corporate accountability. She broke this Uber deactivation story, and Levi joins us now with more. Thank you, and thanks to your reporting. I just gave a couple of the nuggets about your initial story. What happened with that particular Uber driver, and what else did you find?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Marla. So I've been covering the gig worker deactivation issue, sort of what's going on around the country. And I did talk to that Massachusetts driver who had been accused of fraud by Uber. He was asked to take a picture of himself, and Uber determined that he was somewhere else, not where he claimed to be. But he told me that somewhere else was an island where cars can't even go. And so that caught my attention. So I took his case back to Uber, and Uber changed its mind and reactivated him. So after that story, after I wrote that story, I just was, I got inundated with lots of other stories from gig workers who say that they've been unfairly deactivated.
So Uber sent us a statement, and we want to put it up on the screen. It says, "We approach any deactivation decision with caution and consideration. Drivers are also able to appeal eligible deactivations, which includes submitting additional evidence." Doesn't Uber have a right to do this? And also, can you tell us a little bit about that appeal process?
Sure, absolutely. Yes. Uber definitely has a right to try to root out fraud on its platform, right? And Uber did talk with me in depth, or, at length, about the deactivation process. They say that for the most part, drivers have a way to try to appeal their deactivations if they want. But Uber also told me that in some cases, such as when they're suspected of fraud, drivers can be deactivated at any time. That being said, I did take a few more drivers' cases back to Uber, and Uber ended up changing its mind on a couple more cases after I brought them to the company.
Okay, so ultimately you said that you were inundated. My question to you was going to be, did you find that everybody was wrongly deactivated, and were they reinstated? And where does California law stand with this issue of deactivation?
Right. Yeah, one of the most common cases that I found in my reporting, one of the most common reasons for being deactivated was because Uber suspected a driver of committing fraud. But in some cases, the drivers told me that their accounts were taken over, or that they're being wrongly accused of fraud, right? And so what's happening is, it's not really up to me to determine, if I feel like a case is interesting enough, or it seems like the driver was wrongly deactivated, in my opinion, then I take it to Uber, and then they looked at it again. And in some cases they changed their mind, but in many cases they didn't. As for where California law stands on this, California doesn't really have a law that addresses this particular issue, right? As you know, probably, that Uber considers its drivers independent contractors, right? So its drivers aren't subject to the same labor laws as other employees, and Uber, there is no process. There's no set process that the state oversees that would allow the driver or any other gig worker to appeal their deactivations.
Of course, that independent contractor thing has been a point of a lot of contention and a lot of money in California politics as well.